What's up, YouTube? I'm making a video right now, my first commentary video, so don't be too hard on me. I'm wearing a bandana right now because I've been kind of getting threats over social media because of my views, which is kind of weird because I live in America and this should be like a society where you don't have to do that, but I have to, unfortunately, because I value my life. But having that said, I'm a Hispanic male. I live in California in the United States of America. Today is November 9th, 2016, and we just witnessed probably the most historical election of our lifetime. Now, as people across the world are probably watching on television, there's a lot of mad people out there. There's a lot of protesting people out there, and there's a lot of happy people too. Obviously, our nation is very divided right now, and as it seems, because Trump not only won the presidency, he won the Senate and the House. So there is going to be a transition of power that hasn't been seen in this country since Herbert Hoover in 1928. I work in the green sector, and alternative energy. And we had a quarterly field rally today, which is very interesting. Going to this field rally, I was getting a lot of emails, and when I actually got to the rally, some of our corporate managers were talking about the election, and some of them were emotional. And there was one corporate manager that kind of told us a small story that I wanted to share with you guys, and it really kind of hit home to me, and hopefully I can get some feedback on what you guys think about it. So one of our corporate managers, he's an immigrant, and he immigrated from Iran, and he was the third manager to kind of talk on the election a little bit, and this is what he said. So he said that he immigrated from Iran when he was around 7 or 8, and the reason why he immigrated was because his parents had noticed that they were going through a supposed transition of power in his country, and there was a revolution that was about to begin. And he told us that before this had happened, that Iran was kind of like it was like a peaceful society for the most part. They had their problems, but he had friends in the neighborhood, and they would go on their bicycles, and in his words, he said they would raise hell around the block on their bicycles. So he had a relatively decent childhood, and then his parents saw this coming down the pipe. So what they did was they gave him $5,000, stuffed it in his underwear, and sent him with some missionaries to America. So he went to America, and he made a good life for himself. He has a good job, and he does really well. And he said that in his late 20s, 20 years later, that he decided to visit Iran again because he hasn't been there since his parents shipped him off. So he said in his late 20s, he ended up going back to Iran, and out of the 12 or 13 friends that he had, he said that 2 were only still alive. So he went to one of his best friend's house who was no longer alive, and he knocked on the door. When he knocked on the door, he was greeted by his friend's mom, and when he opened the door, he saw that she was a broken woman and seemed like she really had nothing to live for anymore. It was obvious that she'd been through a lot. And she said, "I want to show you something." So she took him by the hand, and she took him to the back of the house, and there was a grave there, and he said, "That's your best friend. That's where we buried him." She took him back in the house, and she took him to a room, and she brings out an invoice. And he said, "What was this?" And she said, "This is the invoice that the government gave me for the bullet that killed my son." And he told us in other countries, that's what a peaceful transition of power looks like. He said that in this country, we have a 2-party system, and he never said it was like the perfect system. And I don't think it is either, I think there's some things wrong with our system, but he said the thing about our system is that there's transfer of power every 4 or 8 years. It usually goes from Democrat to Republican, back and forth or so forth. So the reason why that is so our transition of power can be more peaceful than those in other countries. Because a lot of times in other countries, when there's a transition of power, the power goes to somewhere else that's unknown, and when revolutions happen, a lot of people end up dying. So there's obviously a transition of power right now, but even like Obama said, the sun rises the next day. You know, people aren't being killed in the streets in record numbers. You know, the Dow Jones is really high today. So I'm trying to understand why people are so upset. Because we can be living in countries like Iran, where peaceful transition of power turns into all-out war. I love my country, and I don't want that to happen. But what we are on here is a slippery slope, and if you guys don't wake up and realize what you're doing right now, that can happen to us too. So any feedback or comments would be greatly appreciated. This is my first YouTube video, so don't be too hard on me, all right? God bless you all, and God bless America.